Hi, Nelly. How are you?
Oh, good. You're there. I was just texting you.
Yeah.
Hi.
We're about to get started in a minute. Look at that background. How fabulous.
Your home studio. Isn't this a killer deal?
It is. Can you see me?
I can see you perfectly,
Okay,
Natalie.
I need to upgrade my background.
Well, nowadays with Zoom, you can put any background you want.
I need to figure out how to do that because it hasn't been working for me. I had a beach and then it just didn't appear. So wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and get started, Nelly, now that we've got you on. I'm so excited to have a chance to connect with you. I know we've got participants that are joining us, but I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off with our intro. So Walker's Legacy is proud to present Ask a Boss, our latest digital masterclass series featuring women of influence who have achieved success in business and beyond. Thank you for joining us for today's masterclass with media mogul and entrepreneur, Nely Galán. My name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I am the founder of Walker's Legacy. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's Legacy was created with a mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's Legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com or following us on social media at Walker's Legacy. Before I get started, I'd like to say thank you to the Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, for their continued partnership in helping to make Ask a Boss and other programming that Walker's Legacy produces across the country possible. So let's go ahead and get started with today's program. Nelly, I'm super excited. I'm going to introduce you a bit and then we'll kick it off with some questions. So we are
I'm
joined.
super excited too. I'm honored to be involved with anything to do with Madam Walker. How incredible. The first woman millionaire of color. I love it.
Absolutely. And there was recently the Netflix show that came out. I don't know if you got a
No, I
chance.
love it. My book is called Self-Made and the
I
show's
know.
called
That worked out perfectly. Hopefully you've been seeing the
Meant to Be.
skyrocket. Have you been seeing your sales increase as a result of that come out?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's fantastic. So Nely Galán is a self-made media mogul. She was the first Latina president of entertainment for the U.S. television network Telemundo and an Emmy Award-winning producer of over 700 television shows in English and Spanish. And yes, I said 700, including the hit reality series The Swan for 20th Century Fox, which she produced through her multimedia company, Galan Entertainment. Her company also launched over 10 television channels abroad for companies like HBO, ESPN, Fox, MGM, and Sony. Galan took a mid-career sabbatical, which I'm super interested in learning more about, completing a master's and doctorate in clinical psychology, where she decided to focus on the psychology of money in multicultural communities. She then authored the New York Times best-selling book, Self-Made, Becoming Empowered, Self-Reliant, and Rich in Every Way. And this book is published in English, Spanish, and in Mandarin, about the revolution in women's entrepreneurship led by multicultural women in the US and emerging women around the world. Galan founded the Adelante movement to empower and train multicultural women economically. Her digital platform, Becoming Self-Made, reaches over 500,000 women per month with original content and financial literacy, self-made stories, and webinars. Her next book, which I want to hear about, to be published in 2021, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings. Okay, hold on. Hold tight. Okay, let me read this again, guys. Okay, so actually, I'm going to kick it off with that question first in a second. But her next book, soon to be published in 2021, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings, will inform women who work for others how to invest in order to make money while they sleep. Welcome, Nelly. We are delighted to have you join us.
Honored to be here and on a Sunday helping women think bigger. And I'm just thrilled to be part here with you of Madam Walker, who I just love the movie and I think it's an amazing story.
Awesome. So Nelly, I was going to first ask you about your career, but that book title really has me just kind of like jumping. So let's start kind of where we are today, and then we can work our way backwards if that works. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. So, okay, talk to us about don't buy shoes, buy buildings. What prompted this, particularly given the fact that you have such an illustrious career, and obviously you already have a book called Self-Made. There must be something that you felt was also needed to be said again, and possibly again. So talk to us a little bit about this forthcoming book.
I think it's very timely because right now we're in the middle of a crisis. And so many women are saying to me, oh my God, how are we going to get through this crisis? And, you know, to me, let me just first say that self-made, what it means to me is God and your parents make you, but in order to make it to the end of your life, you're going to have to make yourself over, DIY yourself from the inside out over and over again. And for some of us, that means starting your own business. And for others, it means really realizing what life is about.
Yep.
You know, I say to women, I've had so many crises in my life because in life, you get crises that are like this crisis, which is like a force majeure, something greater than yourself that you can do nothing about, so surrender. And then there are crises that you create, right? You marry the wrong person, you have to get divorced, something happens to your kid, somebody in your family is on drugs, whatever. So life will bring you many crises, both force majeure ones and your own. And for me, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings starts in the first crisis of my life. When I was 5 years old, I was born in communist Cuba. And my parents were in the middle of a revolution, and the country became communist, and we had to leave from one day to the next with the shirt off our backs. And I heard my parents at 5 say, why didn't we buy property? Why didn't we buy property outside of the country? Why do we have no cash? Why didn't we take the money out of the bank? All these lessons that at the time I didn't understand. And then we came to this country. My parents did not speak the language. My mother, who was like from a poor family, had worked like a dog to get a college degree. The college degree was worth nothing. She had to start all over again. Both my parents went to work in factories. The economy in the country was not good. And I learned at an early age, maybe I didn't even know what that meant, but I knew that my parents did not plan for a force majeure crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first lesson of my life. And I think what I learned in that moment, which I didn't know how to articulate, but now I know how to articulate it, is that in life, you can't spend money always thinking of short-term gratification, that you have to plan for the crises of your life. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get into it more with you, but I've learned through the crises of my life, which I'll tell you about, that when I was living hand to mouth and in survival mode, when I entered a crisis, it almost broke me. Mm-hmm. And I realized I have to get to the next crisis with grace. And I've been in a business my whole life, which is television, which anyone that's been in that business, it sounds super glamorous, but so many actors that are famous are broke. Yeah. So many writers, directors are broke because nobody really explains to you that it's kind of a rich people business. Mm-hmm. And that some years you make money and some years you don't. Mm-hmm. And so what I noticed, and I will go back and explain all this, from people that I worked for, older Jewish men that I worked for in the entertainment business, they say to me, honey, when you make money, don't buy bling like a lot of minorities do. Buy buildings. Buy commercial buildings because you're a nice girl. If you buy houses, you won't kick people out of the house. But buildings are rented by corporations. Mm-hmm. And when you own buildings, you will make money while you sleep. And to me, that was like speaking Chinese to me. I didn't know what it meant. Mm-hmm. But what it means is that the secret sauce to your life is, yes, we are people of color and we all want to be rich in every way. We're spiritual people. We care about family, about a lot of other things. But the truth is that if you don't know that the money you make and the money you save will not take you to the end of your life, crises will break you. Mm-hmm. If you don't make money while you sleep through your investments, like right now, I've entered this crisis. I own, and I'm going to tell people, I'm not J-Lo, I'm not Beyonce, I'm not an athlete. If I could have no money till I was 31, at 31, I had $5,000. I invested it in real estate. And by the time I was 45, I had 16 buildings, but I sacrificed. I didn't suffer, but I sacrificed, saving my money, living beneath my means. And those buildings that I bought that now are rented, even if I make a little less money this year,
Still making money on it.
those buildings have made me 5 times the money than being the president of a network, being Latina Tyler Perry, being all these other things that I love and that made me money, but some years they made me no money. But the buildings have made me a millionaire by the time I was 45. Awesome. So I think that's the lesson. So I'm glad you started there, because that is the biggest lesson. That what we learned from Madam Walker, and what you're going to learn from me, is that becoming abundant is not a crime or a sin, or we're not bad people, because the only way we can help our families and our community is to sacrifice for a period of time and then be abundant and be a millionaire.
I love it. So a couple of things. First off, that was like awesome. Just a great kickoff to our conversation today. I always love to cherry pick and kind of make sure that people hear these really important sound bites. And for me, a couple of things resonated, even in things that I've even heard someone like Gabrielle Union mention, where she talked about how a lot of artists are currently struggling. And there is definitely a difference between being famous and being fortunate as it relates to having fortune. And so I think as we come through this Instagram moment, as we come through the social media movement that we're all moving through, really making sure that you have a foundation of stability that will get you through these types of moments of crisis is what's going to be really important, because we see a lot of things on Instagram and in other places that are not always consistent with the realities of how people are actually living. Right. And the other thing that you kind of mentioned, obviously, is just a wise investment of your resources, particularly during this time. It is critical that you live below your means, and that should just be an institutional thing that you do for yourself, even if you can, right? Thinking about what we're spending our money on. And Nely, you talked about when you first came and you were 5 years old, and I want to go back to that moment. So obviously these learnings that we started with in this new book that you have, Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings, coming out in 2021.
Self-made, the book Self-Made, I explain this whole journey.
That's right.
It is a journey to become self-made.
So talk about that self-made journey and the experiences that you had that really kind of got you to that 45-year range, and then we can pick it up from there.
So I think that when my parents got here, they were really struggling a lot, didn't speak the language. I don't think any of us ever believed that there could be a war and we'd all have to move to Russia. And we don't think these catastrophes could happen, but they can. And in a weird way, when you have a crisis like that when you're 5, where the most unbelievable thing happens to you and your family that they never expected to happen, it's a horrible thing, but it's a blessing, because you learn early, which I think so many of us in this country have not experienced, which is why we're a little entitled. Mm-hmm. The bad things do happen to good people. They do. And to people of color. And I think, I say this a lot because my parents came here. I don't think we talk about this a lot, because in the United States, we don't really talk about other people of color, like people that grow up in Latin America or Asia or South Asia. And we don't realize, I always say to my African-American sisters, thank you for your service, because you speak up. And you guys have had 200 years to practice, and it's taken a long time. Those of us that come from these other countries, we had the worst things happen to us. And we were told, if you speak up in your country, you'll go to jail. So we were told, be quiet. And we come here and we get crumbs. And we're so grateful for those crumbs. But we're still on the journey of learning how to have a voice. Mm-hmm. And we never talk about this. So I thank you, my African-American sisters listening, because if it wasn't for you, how would I even know to have a voice? I certainly didn't learn it from my parents or my community. So my parents were like very wimpy, very scared, always scared that maybe they would be sent home where, the economy had collapsed and there was a communist regime, and that we'd have to go back and go to jail. So you can imagine how quiet they were. And in 7th grade, my parents, were going through a very bad economy in the United States and struggling, and they had sent me to all-girl Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I went to all-girl Catholic school with all Jewish girls of all things who were very empowered and had a big voice. And we were making no money. Like, we had no money. And I would overhear my parents at night, and my mother would say to my father, ¿Qué vamos a hacer? No podemos pagar por la escuela. What are we going to do? We can't pay for the school. And my father would say, don't worry, Jesus will help us. Don't worry, Jesus will help us. And I go, Jesus doesn't know the head nun, and they're going to kick me out of the school. There was an old Jewish lady on my block. So I lived in Teaneck, New Jersey, which was Black and Jewish. And then I was like the only Latina there. And she said to me, honey, I sell Avon. Why don't you sell some Avon and I'll give you some free lipstick? And I thought to myself, I gotta go help my parents, because the great thing about being the kid of immigrants is, you know, I'm in a team. My parents are struggling. You have such compassion for your parents because you know that they've really gotten a bad card. They've been given a bad card in this life. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I gotta help my parents. Mm-hmm. So I said, I go to the Jewish lady and I go, I'm gonna sell Avon, but no free anything. It's gotta be 50-50. I had seen that on a TV show. And she's like, all right, I'll give you 50% of the money. Fine. The first week I sold Avon out of my locker in the 7th grade to like mostly Jewish girls and their moms. I made $200.
Wow.
You know, and that's the beginning of immigrants really knowing how to hustle.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why people tell me, you're so good with money. I go, I've been good with money since the 7th grade. Are you kidding me? So by a month, I had made $800.
Wow.
And I paid down my tuition. But then I thought, oh my God, my dad is going to lose it. Like, my dad is like a proud Latino macho guy. So I go to the head nun and I said, listen, you got to write me a letter home and make something up that I got a scholarship, a grant, something, because my dad will not accept this money. And I brought the letter home to my parents. And my mother goes, ¿Qué dice la carta? What does it say? My mother didn't read English. And my father takes the letter and my father reads it and he goes, oh my God, your daughter is a genius and Jesus helped us after all.
And you're like, that was my hustle that helped us.
And I thought to myself at that moment, there is no problem I can't solve from this moment on.
I love it.
But I also stopped being a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents stopped being my parents and they became my kids.
Mm.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And that's why in my book, Self-Made, I say, in your pain is your brand.
Mm.
Because if I didn't have the pain of immigration, the pain of seeing my parents suffer, but also the pain of understanding that those nuns might kick me out of the school, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Absolutely.
And so pain is a double-edged sword, right? And so from there, in the same all-girl Catholic school in my sophomore year of high school, I wrote a story for school, and I wrote a story that takes place in a fishing village in Cuba. And the nun, who was my favorite teacher, my English teacher, says to me, young lady, I don't think you wrote this. I think you plagiarized this. I think this is Ernest Hemingway. Mm. And I went home. She suspended me for 3 days, and I tell my parents, oh my God, this nun's crazy. Like, I'm such a goody two-shoes. You know, I would never do anything wrong, you know, because my parents always told me, don't do anything wrong. Don't go out, you know, because again, that fear that you're going to get kicked out of the country or something. And my parents took the side of the nun. They go, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Beg for forgiveness. So, you know, I can only imagine that that's how Black people felt so many hundreds of years ago in slavery. Like, you couldn't speak up, right? And I was like, what is wrong with these people? Like, I thought to myself, here I am in school, 7th grader, reading about Martin Luther King and the women's movement and speaking up and civil rights and and my parents are like, just go beg forgiveness and just tell her she's right. You know, like, basically admit you made a mistake. And I was so angry at my parents, honestly, thinking to myself, what's wrong with you guys, you know? And I decide in my craziness, which will tell you everything about me, I call the Board of Ed of the state of New Jersey.
Oh my gosh, Nely.
And
how old were you at this point?
Well, I'm in the 7th grade. I'm 12 years old.
Okay.
And I call the Board of Ed and they don't answer. And it's like a whole to-do, right? And you know, what I decided to do instead is I write a letter to 17 magazine, which at the time was the magazine I wrote. And I wrote a letter that basically was like an article about why you should never send your daughter to all-girl Catholic school. And I send it in. And 3 days later, I go back to school. I didn't get through to the Board of Ed. You know, I'm kind of already feeling a little revolutionary. I go back to school, and the nun says, you know, I researched it, and you actually wrote this, and it's actually good, and you got an A+, and that's it. But 3 months later, I get a letter in the mail from 17 with a $100 check, and they say, we're publishing your story. And I freak out because I kind of trashed the school. And I go back to school the day the article comes out. And my biggest fear in life, and my biggest thing that my parents told me never to do, is to go against authority because bad things happen. I get called to the principal's office, and she says, we don't want your kind here. And I get expelled. And I go home, and again, I tell my parents, and my parents are like, how could you do this to us? Do you need to be Che Guevara? Why do you do this? Why do you have to speak badly? We told you never to speak badly about the country, about the schools, nothing. And once again, I call the Board of Ed. I'm so angry at my parents. And thank you, God, an African-American man answers the phone. And I said, can these nuns expel me? Isn't this freedom of speech? Didn't my parents tell me we just left communist Cuba for freedom of speech? And he goes, unfortunately, it's a private school and they can do whatever they want, but you don't have to take it. You are right to feel this way. And it was the first time an adult that kind of looked like me felt like, made me feel like I was not crazy for having these feelings that my parents were crazy. And he said, why don't I get you an interview with the local newspaper? And, you know, you're going to find out that I'm a little impulsive. And I said, okay. I mean, later on, I was like, what the hell did I do? And I do this interview with the local paper. And the next day it comes out, Cuban girl gets expelled for First Amendment issue. And you can imagine there was no social media back then. I always say that if it was today, I'd be Malala because it was a scandal, okay? And my parents were like, why do you do this? Like freaking out. And, you know, it's taken me many years to understand my parents' fear.
Yep.
So when I get home from school, I get a call. I mean, I go to school and all the girls are like, oh my God, like I was like a heroine at the school because I said all the things that were wrong with the school. So I come home and there's a message from the head nun and she goes, bring your parents to school. And can you imagine the car ride with my parents screaming at me the entire way to school? And my mother going, now I have to speak English. I don't speak English. And all the fear that they had and all the pain that they had around that, like trauma. And I get to the school and the nun's like, I never said we were expelling you. I just said we didn't like what you did. You know, clearly she was upset about the bad publicity. And that's the first time in my mind I learned the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You cannot just take it. You have to have a voice. You have to speak up. And she's like, you know, in fact, we've been looking at your grades. You're an AP student. You have such good grades. We're actually going to graduate you 1.5 years early. And my mother and father are like, oh my God, is this good? It went right over their head, right? I go, it's great. It's great. Let's go. And it was the beginning of all great things that happened to me. Because 17 magazine called me and they said, we are so proud of you that you spoke up for yourself. And we're going to offer you the youngest guest editorship in the history of 17 magazine.
Wow.
And I ended up going to work for 17. I got into early admissions at Barnard, but I kept writing articles at 17 magazine. In my wildest imagination, the way that I was raised to be a wife and have 5 kids, I never thought I would be writing in a magazine. And that writing in that magazine got me my first job in TV. The teenage version of the TV show 60 Minutes was coming out for Saturday mornings. And they called me and they said, we love the way you write. They thought I was much older, but that I was writing in the voice of a teenager. And they auditioned me to be a reporter for that show. And I got to go to Austin, Texas. I told my parents, I got a job in Austin, Texas. I'm leaving school. I'm going, you are never leaving us till you're married. I go, I'm escaping. And the day that I was leaving for Austin, I had bought this little car because I was always doing 3 or 4 or 5 jobs. And my mother goes, you are bad, you are selfish, because so many immigrant parents make kids feel really like they don't get it, right? Mm-hmm. And I go, I'm sorry, but I have to go. Mm-hmm. And I moved to Austin, Texas, and I began my career in television, which I would have never imagined, all because I got expelled. I had gotten expelled from that school. And my mother, when she read my book, she said, I am so sorry that I tried to guilt trip you when you left. She goes, but you were my everything. You were my therapist. You were my, you were my whole reason for being. And what would have happened to us if you had not left that day? And where would we be now? And I say that because so many women, to help their families, always sacrifice for themselves, don't go on their own journey. Mm-hmm. And what would happen, and listen, when my son went away to college 2 years ago, I said, boy, karma is a bitch, because it is horrible when your kid leaves, but you have to let them go. And we have to go, because we can't help our families and our communities if we don't be everything we were meant to be.
I love it. I love it. Nely, so one of the things that you talked about in that story was kind of overcoming personal life experiences and overcoming obstacles that otherwise could be debilitating for some people. Some people are kind of paralyzed by their state of circumstance. Mm-hmm. And it takes a going inside of yourself and a really kind of talking to yourself and motivating yourself. And I'd love to just hear if you have any tips for folks about how they can motivate themselves, particularly given where we are right now, where people are finding themselves in circumstances of a lack of hope and not really knowing if they can plan. We don't know how we can plan. We don't know what to do next.
Well, first of all, because I'm older and wiser, and I could be probably everyone's mom that's watching, I'm going to tell you something. First of all, I'm going to tell you what I know for sure, which is that after every crisis of your life, most people give up. If you stand the course and you hang in there, the best thing that ever is supposed to happen to you comes after a crisis. And it's happened to me over and over and over again. So that was the first couple of crises of my life. I mean, what could be worse than to be expelled from school and have your parents think it's shameful? But I'm going to tell you something. In Spanish, there's a great saying. It says, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you become. I'm very blessed because I love being Latina. I'm so into being Latina, but I'm also blessed that I grew up in a town with Jewish girls and Black girls who became my best friends. And I think that in life, you have to find people, not necessarily just be marginalized in your own community. Find people that are better than you at everything and hang out with them. I was in a family that had not allowed me to find my voice. But I had Jewish girlfriends and African-American girlfriends who had a voice. And I had that African-American man answer the phone when I called him. And in that moment, he was a better parent for me than my own parents. And that doesn't mean that I don't love and adore my parents. And I so understand now their pain, and I can stand with them in their pain. But I needed that African-American father at that moment. And I believe that if I wasn't open to understanding that my parents were going through a trauma and they were doing the best they could, but there was a better voice out there for me. And I say in my book, when you are in pain, act as if. When you don't know how to find the voice for yourself or the gumption for yourself to take yourself to a higher place, imagine someone. It could be someone famous. It could be Oprah. It could be Michelle Obama. It could be your grandmother, or it could be an aunt, or it could be a friend, and pretend you're that person. For me, I've often, in the years that followed, I love Shonda Rhimes, and I always, I look at her because she's a very shy person, but she writes fierce women. And when I look at Olivia Pope, even though she's kind of an exaggerated person, but I go, how would I sound if I wanted to sound like Olivia Pope? If I was going to answer in the voice of the character of Olivia Pope? Sometimes you have to act as if you're someone that you admire and try it. And when you're in that voice, you go, wow, this feels good. And eventually your real voice merges with the voice of that character. And I do think it's a lot like acting. but it is a way that's easy and fun to find your authentic voice. Without a voice and without money, you're not going to make it. Those are the two things I want you to know. You have to make money. You have to feel like, you know, when I was selling Avon, I remember thinking, and I wrote a story about it, I want to be a millionaire. What the heck did I even know what that meant? But I knew that my parents were suffering economically. And I knew I was a good person and they were a good person. And even though Catholicism had said to me, oh, when I went to school with the nuns and the priests, they would say to me, good people are poor and bad people are rich and we're going to go to heaven first. But you know what? I didn't buy that because I had met poor people that were bad and I knew rich people that were good. There's good and bad people that are poor and there's good and bad people that are rich. And I wanted to be rich, but I wanted to get there a good way. And so I think that helps you think that in any dark moment, first of all, I promise you 100%, the light is coming, but it's not coming if you sit on your butt and do nothing. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. If you do something, you have to have 50-50 shot, but you got to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And you will be rewarded when you least expect it.
I love it. So what did you say? Find your voice and make money? Make money and find your voice. So you talked to us a little bit about using your voice while you were in Austin, becoming a reporter, and you became the first female president of Telemundo. What was, talk to us a little bit about that career.
Oh, there's a lot that happened in between.
Oh, yes.
And it's a good story. I went from Austin, from that TV show. I was the youngest person to be hired in Boston at CBS Network in the producer correspondent training program. So I was going to, my goal at that point at 19 was going to be to go become Diane Sawyer. That's the only, or Barbara Walters or somebody. And I was always, the way that it works when you're kind of learning to be a reporter, they send you out to do 1 million stories a day. Mm-hmm. And I came out to LA to interview a lot of people that knew John F. Kennedy for a JFK special on the network that Diane Sawyer was hosting. And one of the people I interviewed was a guy named Norman Lear, who was a very big producer in Hollywood at the time. And he's like, what are you? What are you? I go, I'm Latina. And he says, oh, my partner and I just bought the first Spanish TV station in the United States. We're going to call you to come and work for us. I was like the only Latino they met, Mm-hmm. I go to meet with them again, and they're like, we want you to come. It was like a rinky-dinky, crappy little station in Newark, New Jersey, which at the time was very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be the first band. And they go, we want to offer you a job, and you're going to run this little station, which was, literally like a college town, little nothing. And I said, excuse me, guys, but, no offense, but that sounds horrible to me. I'm a Latina working at CBS Network, and I'm going to be a network correspondent. And Jerry Parenchio, who was the partner of Norman Lear, is like, that sounds like a factory worker to me. And I go, what? And he goes, young lady, are you rich? I go, no, sir, I'm dead broke. And he goes, well, I'm rich. Do you not know that the Latino market is going to be a multi-billion-dollar market and you're going to be employee one of the first station? He's like, you could not be smart at all and you're going to be rich. And when he said that to me, and I always wonder, if my son was given the same opportunity because he's had a very different life, would he go for his ego or would he take the crappy job? Because I knew my parents were dead broke, because I had the responsibility of carrying my parents and my brother, I quit the sexy job at CBS, even though that was my dream, and I became employee one of what eventually became Telemundo.
Wow.
And so you can only imagine being employee one, that it was really rinky-dinky. What it took to go from that first employee through many iterations of that network to then be the first Latina to run a network. I went through a lot and a lot of learning, but I became that person. I changed my vision and I learned a business and I became an expert at my market. And I still to this day think that was the single greatest decision of my life.
Awesome. And then somewhere in that, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, somewhere in there, you also, in the middle of your career, decided to go back to school. So
well, I think first of all, let's talk about that because I run the network.
Yep.
Then we sold the network to NBC.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became Tyler Perry Latina. So that's how I produced 700 TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Because NBC inherited a company that they didn't know anything what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I became the producer that made all the shows. And then some of my shows crossed over. So I started doing Spanish shows and then doing English shows. And then in 2008, I had made money. I had started 2 businesses after I worked for all these other people. One of my businesses sold. So let me be really clear when I tell you this midlife thing that I did. Had I not already made money, I always tell women, and I say this in my book, life is about 2 parallel tracks, mission and money. But money comes first. Because it's very easy. Money doesn't make you happy, but money gives you choices. And you can be, we all get raised in this country to think, follow your bliss and the money will come. That's BS. Not everything that you do in life. If you're a singer, if you're a writer, you may not make money for 20 years. You have to have a parallel track that makes money. So I was doing the TV thing, climbing the corporate ladder, then we sold the company, then, we got out of that, and then I started being an entrepreneur, but I lived the years I made money and I had a show and bought a building, bought another building, lived beneath my means. All my friends said to me, did you just make way more money than we did? And I go, no. When I was 31, I took $5,000 that I had and I bought a building. You put a down payment on a Jaguar. You went to Europe like Rich. I went to Europe on $100 a day, which a young person, it's fun to do that. Yep. But when you're in your 50s, you're gonna want to go stay at the Ritz.
Yeah.
So I made all those sacrifices so that by the time I was 45, I could retire if I wanted to from my buildings, all those buildings that I poured the money into. So at 45, we had a crash in the economy. I had already gone through, the riots in LA. I had gone through an earthquake in LA. I had gone through a flood, a mudslide. We had gone through 9/11, and now I got to 2008. And by that point, I could enter a crisis in grace because I had enough money to live on. So what did I do? All of a sudden, I'm selling NBC, 500 shows, and they go, oh, we're only going to buy 40 from you this year because we have a crisis, just like we're having now. So guess what I did? I said, if I were to die in a year, what would I regret? I have an 8-year-old son. What would I regret? That I didn't finish school. Because I still believe in education. And so guess what I did? I made sure all my staff had jobs. I took care of everybody because I'm a mom. And I went back to school and I got a master's and doctorate in clinical psychology. Amazing. Because I had worked for so many crazy people that I needed help. I have to really analyze this life that I've lived and go inward and step away and figure this out. And so while I was in school, I had to write a dissertation to get that doctorate. And the reason I got my doctorate is because my son said, Mom, I hate school. Why am I going to go to college someday? You've made money and you never finished college. And I go, now I'm going to go get a master's and a doctorate. And I'm going to show you. Yeah. And I wrote my dissertation about multicultural women because having run a network, having worked with Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Walmart, and all these people, I would be on all these boards and they would say, multicultural women, particularly Black and Latinas, are the #1 emerging market in the world, which means we're the #1 customer. They are going to control the US economy for the next 100 years. They have so much power. And I go, we don't know that. We don't know that. Yeah. So I wrote my dissertation on multicultural women as the sleeping giant in America economically. And emerging women around the world in Africa, in India, in China, in Latin America, they don't know their power either. Yep. And so when I came out of my doctorate and finished my doctorate, I said to myself, this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to focus on teaching. What is the one thing that I have learned through my immigrant journey, my painful journey? I have learned to be frugal. I have learned to invest. and I've learned to become self-made, not by being like a one-of-a-kind talent that sings, not by being J-Lo or Beyonce. That's 1 in a million. Mm-hmm. Not by being a 1 in a million athlete, by being an intern that was an assistant, that worked her way up, that saved money. So if I could do it, all of you can do it. And I decided that is what I'm going to focus the rest of my life on, is helping women of color become wealthy.
Awesome.
And build.
Nely, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. Before I do that, I just want to ask our audience, if you have any questions for Nely, if you please join us in the chat box and make sure you add them so we can get them answered. Nely, this is a perfect segue for my final kind of 2 questions. Number 1, we've just talked about how important and powerful multicultural women are. Oftentimes we don't know it, or we're not allowed to express it in ways that we would like to, or we're not valued at organizations. And being the first woman to serve as the president of Telemundo and to be in many of the rooms and spaces that you've been in, I'd love to hear about your experience generally as the woman in that space, and what it felt like, and what kind of, you know, coaching you had to do for yourself to work yourself through moments that are inevitable, where I'm sure you were probably mansplained to or made to feel less than at some given point in time. And then my last question is a great segue to hear more from you about the work you're doing today to empower multicultural women, obviously with that as a backdrop through the Adelante movement.
So I will not lie to you that my life in corporate America was horrific. Horrific. I mean, when I go and see women all over the country and they tell me, we were told not to wear these earrings, we can't wear this, we can't, you're too loud, you're too this, your lipstick's too red, your hair is too this. I mean, it is a difficult journey. It is not a pleasant place for us in corporate America. But I will tell you this, I mean, and that's why I'm so pro entrepreneurship. And that is why I'm so pro, even if you work for other people, start a side hustle and start learning how to be entrepreneurial, even if you're not fully leaving and starting a business. Not everybody is a person that starts a business. However, that corporate life, I would not be where I am today. I would not tell people, quit everything and go start a business, because that is a very difficult journey without the training in a corporate environment. So what I do, and what I did for me to survive, and what I tell women to do, is I pretended the entire time I was in corporate America that I was in business school, and this was my school. And so when I saw anything that people did, I mean, and I saw some pretty bad things, okay? I would write them down. I'd say, if I were to own my own business, I would never do this. If this were my company and it was my money, I would do this. And I would always try to tell the people that I worked for, but 99% of the time they didn't listen to me. But I wrote it down because I thought, I never want to forget this. And I'm lucky that I wrote all those things down, because why did I go to psychology school and not business school? Because I really wanted to learn human nature, because I felt that I lived through business school. Mm. I knew everything that people were doing. I knew all the politics. I knew everything. Mm-hmm. So don't ever look at any job you have as like, I hate this job. So don't be a victim. Don't allow yourself to be a victim. You go in there and you say, this is a horrible experience. I am going to suck it all in. I'm going to learn. I am going to be masterful at everything they're doing wrong. And when I do it for myself, I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. Success is the best revenge. And so when you ask me, what am I going to do from now till the day I die? I have created a platform for all of you called Becoming Self-Made. I have done hundreds of interviews with women of color, hundreds. Women that own, African-American women that own 10 McDonald's. Not enough of us buy franchises. Why? We're silly. You don't have to invent something from scratch. Being an entrepreneur does not mean you have to invent everything from scratch. Not everybody's Mark Zuckerberg. You know, a lot of us can just take a template and go make money. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stories of women, young, old, Black, Latina, Asian, Indian. Okay, and there's webinars. When you go, and you know that I'm going to give this to all you women, becomingselfmade.com/mastery. I have a webinar series called Mastery. I show you step by step for free how I did it. How did I save the $5,000 to buy the first building? How did I learn about real estate when I knew no one and nothing about real estate? And by the way, all of you can do it. How did I buy my first property? How did I flip that property to buy more properties? How did I use the tax code in my favor? All the laws, you know, the last couple of weeks, all I've been doing is going online and teaching women how to fill out the PPP forms because most of us don't apply for the money.
Yep.
Why are the rich people getting the money and we don't apply? So I'm teaching you step by step how to apply. You can go on my website and see the webinar. I tell you exactly how to fill out the forms. What do you hand in? Go get that money. It's yours to get. You pay taxes. It's your money. So I show you step by step, how did I go from 31 with no money to 45 retired when I'm not J-Lo or Beyonce? And you can do it too. So I have content deluxe. And, you know, later in my career, my next thing I want to do is I really want to focus on financial services and banking for women like us, because the system is not devised to help us become wealthy.
I love it.
That's what I'm working on.
So this is a perfect segue for Sandra Fernandez's question, which is, what is your advice for women who are just getting started or just starting to take control of their finances on the journey to build wealth? So we know we've, you know, heard a little bit about the $5,000, but how do you get started here?
Well, you're going to hate what I'm going to tell you, but I have to be honest with you. The only way you are not in survival mode is if you have 2 years of salary saved. 1 year for a crisis like the one we're going through, and 1 year of salary that you will invest, either in real estate, stocks, a business, something. So remember that sacrifice is not suffering. When you have a goal, when you know, I tell people, make art. What is it that you know, if you are 20, you should think about what you want your life to look at 50 and reverse engineer. If you're older like me, I go to 85 at this point. So you have to have a vision for your life. Make art about what you want your life to look like. Where do you want to live? What do you want your hair to look like? What do you want the money? How many kids do you want to have? Imagine the life you want. And every time you're going to spend money on stupid things, look at the picture you drew or the collage you made of the life you want and sacrifice, and put those 2 years of salary away. And how you're going to do it, those of you that live in New York or LA or San Francisco, I know you're telling me this lady's crazy. You can do it. I don't care if you have to go live with 3 people. I don't care if you don't drink, you don't have Starbucks. I don't care if you have to have 5 jobs. When you're young, work 5 jobs. Because as you get older, you're not going to have the energy. You have to amass money when you're young and can do 5 jobs. And what you're going to do is while you're working for other people, you're not going to be victimized. You're going to write down everything. You're going to be in business school. You're going to start a side hustle. That side hustle is going to be 1 hour on Sundays. I want you to clean out your closets. Right now is perfect time. Clean out your closet and start posting things on Amazon or eBay. When we're back from the pandemic, all of you that have a car should be driving Uber or Lyft. Hello, nothing should be unused. Make money as a side hustle and don't touch that darn money. Don't touch it until you've got 2 years of salary saved.
I love it.
And I explain this in detail in my webinar. So please, you can start whenever. If you're 12, if you're 20, if you're 50. If you're 50, you're going to sacrifice more because you got to get there quicker. But it's never too late to become self-made.
I love it, Nely. And it's funny, I'll share a quick story just for me. When I first started my first company when I was 26, I did exactly what you said, which is I went in my closet and I took out all my Gucci bags and I put them all on eBay. And I sold them because I said, I don't need these right now. I need to invest this money into my business. And so I oftentimes tell people that there are so many things that we're spending money on, including shoes. Don't buy shoes.
Don't buy shoes. Don't buy shoes.
Okay. And let me just make sure we have, I know Mia has posted in the chat box a link to Nely's website, Becoming Self-Made, and her masterclass series. Please do check her out there. I'm going to check here for another set of questions. Okay, there are a few of us investing. This is from Betty Francisco. There are a few of us investing, and it's been difficult to convince other Latinos to invest. How do we change perceptions about wealth and investing, especially investing in women and businesses owned by people of color?
Yeah, I think so many of us, the same way that I describe why we have trauma from coming from these other countries, and our parents give us a lot of trauma. So we get scared and we don't believe in investing. And you know what? You're not going to convince someone that doesn't want to do it to do it. So you have to also give to givers. You know, like, if don't try to convince somebody that they're not ready, because if they invest and you lose the money, then they're going to hate you. If you have that vision, you do it, but do it wisely. Learn, you know, really, that's why I give you all these tools on the website. Learn how to do it. And let's keep having these chats together. I mean, I think that it's so sad that, you know, women like us, so many of us do buy a lot of stuff. And I get it, because when you're a person of color, what other people don't understand is that we're profiled. You don't go to Beverly Hills and walk into Chanel and not think that you're going to be so you have to look like you're rich through the things that you have. But you know what? That's how the system is breaking you. Because for the moment you buy these things and you show like you're kind of posing, you're really not the real deal. You're really not rich. The richest people in the world, you look at them, they almost look like poor people. They low-key it. People like us need to change our mindset, and it only starts one person at a time, to say, I don't care if I look like today, like I don't have a lot. I am going to be rich. I am going to be wealthy, and I am going to change my community. I'm going to change my family. I'm going to send my kids to college. I was able to send myself to college, you know, and I can be philanthropic. I can give to all of you. I can do everything for you for free. You cannot do that till you've taken care of yourself first. All of us want to go run nonprofits and help the world. You cannot be a wounded healer. If you haven't healed yourself, you can't heal anyone else.
That actually dovetails us well into Shaylee Heckman's question, which is, how do you feel about reinvesting money into your own business? I teach social media and have hired others to grow my biz. She's also a big fan of the Swan. So I just wanted to shout you out there and just ask about investing in your business.
I totally believe in investing in your own business. However, again, 2 years of salary, 1 year you don't touch. Let me explain something to you. If I didn't have at least a year, which I have more at this point, but a year of salary put away that I never touched, when this whole pandemic happens, and forget that if we get PPP money or not, you know, my buildings, I have to let people, you know, not pay their rent. So would I be panicking right now? No, because I can pay for the building for a couple of years. If you have you're starting a business, and whatever kind of business, eBay, whatever, and you haven't saved a year of salary, and your car crashes, and you don't have proper insurance, that's it, you're gone. Or if you have a horrible accident and you've been working freelance and you now have to go to the hospital, you're broken. Mm-hmm. So the first order of business, 1 year of salary saved. Whatever you make, whatever you do, goes to that. It is not to be touched. It's a savings account. You can put it in a money market. You're not to invest it, nothing. It is your money in case of an emergency. Then you're going to start playing. Then you're coming into life. And the next batch of money you make, you can start investing it in a business, or you can invest it in some, the other thing we don't think about is maybe we don't want to be entrepreneurs. Maybe we know a killer entrepreneur. That's what Jewish people do, right? We have to learn from other people. You see that? Let them do the business. I'm going to invest in that business, right? So not everything is us. Not all of us are built to be entrepreneurs.
I love it.
Self-made, but we can all be self-made. Make sure you listen to that.
Yes. And make sure you visit Nely at becomingselfmade.com. See, look at that. I am going to close out. I'm going to say, just because I know we have the last 5 minutes here, if you do have a question, please make sure that you...
you can email me at info@becomingselfmade.com.
Perfect.
Send it. I got them.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Nely. And if there are any other questions here, make sure you add them in the chat box. But without further ado, Nely, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today with Walker's Legacy. I know we were so interested in having you speak at our national conference, but obviously due to COVID, we weren't able to make that happen. But we are so blessed to hear from you today. Personally, I can say that what you have shared with us today is something that women are going to remember for a long time. It's going to frame and shape a lot of the decisions that they make, both about their personal finances, but also about their entrepreneurial endeavors. I have been personally moved, and it's Sunday, so it's always nice to kind of close out these weeks during COVID with something inspirational, and you've been nothing short of that. So thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. And then
I just want to say that we also have to remember why I love the story of Madam Walker is none of us can be something unless we see someone else that's like us that did it.
That's
and
right.
Women have come before us that have paved the way for all of us. And I hope in some way I can pave the way for you, that you can see that not everybody in our community has to be a singer, an actor, an athlete. You can be special. You can be an ordinary woman that becomes extraordinary through your action.
Absolutely. And I will just personally say, and look fly doing so. Let's just let it not go unnoticed, Nely, that you look fly, okay? I know we talked about J-Lo, but you are serving me goals right now. So I am taking notes on that also.
I just want you all to know, you guys all have to look up my house, because I painted my house Latino colors and the neighbors freaked out, and now my house has become the most Instagrammed house in the world. So look up Instagram house in the world, and you'll see my house in Venice Beach. And so I want you to know that, and when I did it, everybody was like, are you doing a piñata? And I go, I am so blessed to be a successful Latina that can be fully Latina. And I want you all to know you don't have to be anything else but who you are, and you can be self-made.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to those who joined us and submitted your fantastic, thought-provoking questions. Walker's Legacy program looks to bring you insightful, meaningful opportunities for conversation and community. And we hope that you found today during this special hangout opportunity with Nely here on Zoom. We hope to see you at some upcoming programs that we have. Next week, you can join us on Sunday as well for Sylvia Acevedo, who is the CEO of Girl Scouts. Nely, do you know Sylvia?
I do know Sylvia, and she's super great, and she's doing a great job at the Girl Scouts.
Yes, she is. She's awesome. And look out for other events happening in your city, including the 9-week Walker's Legacy Entrepreneurship Training Program happening in Indianapolis virtually, as well as nationally launching in July. Thank you guys again for joining us. And Nely, it has been an absolute honor. Thank you so much.
I'm going to leave you with my favorite word, adelante, which means move your butts.
All right, awesome. Have a good Sunday. Bye-bye.